Good morning, everyone. You got David Abrams here along with Wilco. Wilco has been someone that I've actually followed. I think it's been about 2 years, to be honest with you, Wilco. 2 or 3 years. I joined a SaaS mastermind group. Joe Troyer had put together a SaaS mastermind group, if you remember that back in the day. And you were in there, and definitely someone I was following, I learned from, and I've watched your success over the past few years as you launch new products in the SaaS space, and you just have such a great eye on marketing and sales and the ingenuity of your products. I wanted to reach out to you to get you on this show, bring on guests here and say hi to everybody. Hey, everyone. But I just wanted to kind of pick your brain, learn about your journey, and really just selfishly try to get some marketing knowledge stolen from you because you're just so sharp on everything you do. So welcome. And good morning. First of all, it's like 9 a.m.
Yeah, good afternoon in my time zone. Good morning for you. It's great to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. Thank you for being here. And I guess hello to everyone. We don't have that many people on today. Again, it's pretty early today, but we're going to go through obviously the story here. I would love to start with your journey, and then talk a little bit about some of your recent products. I know you've done the Connectio suite, which we own a couple of those products, as well as Upviral, which we also own, and we've run multiple campaigns with. I guess just to start off, I would love to know your journey, kind of how you got into this whole online marketing thing, maybe from the even get-go, how you even got into entrepreneurialism. I think you just have an incredible story.
Yeah, sure, man. So to start at the beginning, I'll have to go way back.
Hey, guys.
I was actually 16, currently 30, so that's like 14 years ago, which I guess in online terms is like the Stone Age, right? Mm-hmm. So I was 16 years old, and you probably know the movie The Matrix, right, David?
Love it.
And in that movie, every character has their own pair of sunglasses, and I was a 16-year-old boy, so I wanted to have one of those. Mm-hmm. But because I'm from the Netherlands here, they were nowhere to be found here, and so I started looking online, and I found a company in the US where I could actually buy them from. Now, at that point in time, like buying something online was not a thing. Now, my parents are actually farmers, so their mind was like, if you buy something online, you will get a virus. Like not if, like you will get it, right? Like that was sort of like the way it was back then, at least here in the Netherlands. But still, I wanted to have them, and because of the shipment cost, there was no way I could buy them by myself. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to put up an ad online where I basically say, hey, I wanted to buy these sunglasses. Who wants to buy them from me? So they will sort of buy them together, right? So people would actually order them from me, send me the money because I didn't have the money up front. Then I would be able to put the order out to the US, hope I would not get a box of stones back in the mail. And then 2 months later, because I went for the cheapest shipment cost, obviously, 2 months later, I would get the sunglasses and I would send them back to everyone who ordered. And I was hoping to sell like a couple, so I would maybe have a sunglass for free. And these sunglasses, they were actually cheap, right? They were like €4-ish, which is roughly the same, $4 or $5 for every sunglass. And within no time, I sold for 17,000 worth of sunglasses, and I was like, wow. And at that point, I didn't even tell my parents, so they were definitely not happy. We actually had to bring the cash, like actual cash, to Western Union. So my parents went with me after they sort of got adjusted to the idea. Anyway, long story short, I didn't make any money out of that, but that really opened my eyes to what is possible online, right? I mean, I just put an ad online and we did 17,000 worth of sunglasses. So I was 16, so I figured, you know what? Every single year I'm going to do that, either with sunglasses as well as various other e-commerce products, right? Like all kinds of things. And what I actually noticed is that I did not like the physical side. I did not like making all the packages and handling with people who wanted to have a different color or like they wanted to return it or whatever. Like I didn't like that part, but I loved the online marketing part, right? I just loved how to just reach people and sell things online. So I decided to just focus on that. I did not want to handle any customers or anything like that. So I switched to, and I'll keep it short because there's a long journey. So I switched to Google AdSense. At some point I realized that if someone clicks on your advertisement on Google AdSense, you will actually get $1. And I'm like, what? Like that was the whole new world to me. So when I figure that out, I decided, all right, I'm going to stop selling e-commerce products, and I'm just going to send that same traffic where I was getting traffic from to sites where Google AdSense was basically on. People click on it, and I would get money for that without actually having to send out anything, right? No shipment, no customers, nothing. So that was pretty awesome. But as you know, everything lasts as long as it does. There's always an end. So it went really well, and I got sort of greedy. Once again, I was still just a kid, right? I got kind of greedy. I broke some rules that I shouldn't have. So obviously they shut down my account, right? So I was back to zero.
And
I was actually doing pretty
fake clicks where people were like the fake clicking on your AdSense, or
no, not that shady. Like I would never do something that shady. But basically, you were only able to have like three AdSense banners on every single page, and I had like 4 or 5. So I wouldn't say I was breaking like the rules by like unethical, but the rules were you could have maximum 3, and I had 4 or 5 on every page. So for that reason, they still banned me. And before that time, I was making roughly between $1,000 and $1,500 a day. So I like being I think I was like 18 years old at that time. I felt like the king of the world, right? Like that, like I was like, woo! And then the next day I sort of at some point I was back down to zero, and that made me realize that if you're depending on just one thing, you don't really have a business. You would expect that I'd learn from that. Actually, did not. Because after I started doing a lot of Google AdWords, and I sent I bought traffic using Google AdWords into all kinds of affiliates sites here in the Netherlands. Nothing like the IM world that you see these days, but more like things such as mobile phones, holidays, like actual real life products, if you may call it like that. I started doing really well with that. Once again, 100% depending on Google this time, because I was getting all my traffic from Google AdWords. Well, you guess what happened? In this case, I didn't get banned, but their quality algorithm changed, so they didn't want to send any traffic to those who were just a thin affiliate, who were not actually providing value. I was just sending it over to all kinds of affiliate sites. So once again, back to zero. And that's actually when so far I was doing everything on the Dutch market. And I always wanted to do something in the US market, or at least the English spoken market, right? So I gave myself a 6-month period to travel to the other side of the world. I went to Sydney, hired an office there. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I want to do something, right? I want to start over from scratch. And for the first, long period of that, so those 6 months, I just focused on doing this exact same things as before. Didn't work. And as sort of a side project, I started working on a WordPress plugin. Now, I'm not a developer myself, but I just saw something that I needed to have myself. I hired someone on Upwork to create that WordPress plugin. And initially, I just gave it away for free. I just put it online. And basically what I told everyone is hey, enter your email address, you'll get the plugin. And after they needed to share it on Facebook to actually get access to the plugin. So that way, I was building up my list. Now, this was the first time I ever built up an email list. First time I ever did anything like software. And at some point, I had an email list of a couple thousand people. Wow. So I decided to create the pro version of that, and I sold that for $47. Now, zero experience in selling. I sent out an email and I said something in the line of hey, if you want it, you can maybe buy it, but if you don't, I understand. I was really I didn't have no idea how to actually sell. This was after a 6-month period where I made no money at all, and then those 24 hours made just over $10,000 US. Wow. And to me, that day I will never forget. And this sounds such like a cliche story, but I will literally never forget it, because I finally was able to get something off going again, and that's really how I sort of started in the whole idea of software, right? Like you do as well, David. And initially, this was a WordPress plugin. So later on, as you know, I believe a lot more in the SaaS business. So over time, I sort of switched to a SaaS business instead of focusing on WordPress. And that's sort of bringing me where I am today.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you had this kind of up and down journey, kind of figured out something that worked. You kind of went in on it. You didn't, I think a lot of times I hear these stories when people are younger and they just kind of dive into things and they do it without the fear that sometimes when you get older, you have this like fear of failure. Like, am I going to do this right? Am I going to fail? Is this going to be wrong? But it sounds like because you started young, you were just jumping into things. You're like, let's just see if it works. And you were getting results and you just like, this is working. Obviously things like didn't pan out on every single one of those ventures, but you just kind of took action on those things. I mean, were you learning on each one as they kind of failed and you went to the next one? Were you kind of learning a lesson for each one that kind of brought you to that first big win with software, with the WordPress plugin?
Yeah, well, definitely. Like, first of all, I realized that I've been very lucky to start that young, because every single time I was doing something, I started something, I always looked at my friends around me and always thought like, all right, so worst case scenario is that I end up just like them with nothing, right? Because if you're like a 16, 17, 18, 20-year-old kid, it's okay to not have any money, right? So worst case scenario is I'm the exact same as anyone else. While if, for example, you would start on your 50s and you have like a family to provide for, I can imagine that like there's a harder mental risk that you see in certain things. So first of all, I've been lucky that I started that young. I've never really experienced that kind of risk. At least that's not how I looked at it. But yeah, like the story that I just told you, I sort of shared the ups and downs. Obviously, there's, I think from every 10 things I tried, only one actually succeeded. I mean, that's how it works, right? You just learn as you go. So yeah, like I would not have done it any different. Like every lesson, everything was a lesson on itself, I'd say. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now for that WordPress plugin, when you kind of just got started, did you have any experience hiring developers before? Have you ever done that? Like what was that experience like when you kind of just got started? Obviously now you've built some amazing SaaS companies. I think you manage like 15 people right now already, but kind of what were those initial lessons that you learned kind of getting into maybe SaaS or software, or just kind of building your first plugin?
Yeah, I think the first experience could be best described as painful. So I started. I just posted an ad on Upwork, and initially, like I had zero idea how it worked. I just knew sort of what it should do, right? And I was not communicating it in a way that I should be communicating it, like what I'm doing right now. So back then I was just like really vague. It was more like, yeah, it should be a plugin, it should this and that, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And I really, like, it was way too vague and way too open for interpretation. So it actually took quite a few months until I saw something, and then like I could basically just put it in the bin, and then I hired someone else. And at that point I started doing, it's actually, I'm glad, I think I learned that lesson pretty quickly, but then on the second round, I actually draw everything out. So I literally made like a wireframe on paper, shot actual photos of that to show like, all right, this is how it should look. Mm-hmm. And then I started explaining, like, if they click on this button, it should do that. If like, I sort of started explaining the logic behind it, because if you're too vague about things when the first time you're hiring a developer, then because in your mind, it might be super easy, it might be logic, but in their mind, it's actually not. And something that you think, I'll do it like this, could actually end up, being a month of work, while even though you think it's actually really easy. So the first lesson did not go well. Second try, I was way more specific in what I actually wanted, and I really thought it through, because I actually realized that the first time I didn't even know it exactly myself, right? I was actually like, I thought he would just figure it out, but I guess if you were the owner, like oftentimes I would say you're also the product manager, like you're the one who actually decides how it should work and how the logic should work. And obviously you've got people experienced in that, helping you out with that, but especially if you're starting out, I mean, you need to make sure that you understand exactly how it all works. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the main lessons I learned in that initial first round of getting a piece of software developed. Yeah.
I think that's a valuable lesson for whether you're doing products and SaaS to any type of management. And I guess kind of the idea behind it is people can't always understand what's in your head. Like you have to get very good as a leader in communicating the vision, the product, the goal. You have to be specific in what you're looking for, how to do it. And especially in software, you can really go down the rabbit hole of building something not to spec. So the more detailed you can be in your MVP, the more detailed you can be when you're kind of laying out your plans, the better your product managers or your developers can really kind of follow that thing. But I think that's a valuable lesson for any product. Now, you made $10,000 your first day with your WordPress plugin, or your first sales there with your WordPress plugin. Where did you go next? How did you then kind of up level into another SaaS? Like, what, you kind of probably got really excited about the product. Where did you go next, and what made you kind of make that jump?
Yeah, so just for the story, makes it easier to explain. The plugin was called WordPress for Facebook, and if I remember correctly, I've just been doing the exact same thing. I'm not even sure how I promoted it. I think most traffic actually came in organically, and because I saw sales coming in, I was like all excited. So I kept improving that plugin a little bit, like new features and things like that. And at some point, I came in contact with someone who's more like inside of the launch space, so someone who's doing big affiliate-based launches that you probably know as well, and a lot of your audience might have seen it as well, where like a lot of people start promoting the exact like one product in a single week because it's new. And I started talking to him. His name is Mark Thompson, right. And at this point, I was already working on a bigger update of the of that plugin. So I did what any starting marketer would do. I would not do it again. I think things changed, but back then I thought it was a good idea to basically launch WordPress for Facebook 2.0. How original, right? So we created the 2.0 version, and we launched that with like I said, with Mark Thompson, because I had no contacts in with affiliates. I had no experience with copywriters or design. So basically, he did all of that. I just had the tool. And we did multi-six figures on that launch. And obviously in between, I was already doing nice, but not like multi-six figures in a week. That to me was insane. It was literally insane. And shortly after, actually, because I don't like the big downside of WordPress plugins is support. I mean, there's so many plugins, there's so many templates, so many different systems that there can be so many conflicts, right? Like, and you have to keep it updated. And then if another developer actually does a poor job, then your customers are actually going to come to you because there might be a conflict, right? Mm-hmm. So eventually I sold that plugin to basically give myself more free space to start something over from scratch. And that's actually when I started started with SaaS, basically. Yeah.
Now, it sounds like I kind of want to dig into this because this is interesting. You had a plugin, it was doing well, and you did a launch with an affiliate who already had an audience that would be great for your plugin to be launched to, version 2.0. How did you get in touch?
Yeah, not just his audience, also his affiliates, basically.
How did you get in touch with Mark? I mean, he's a big software guy. He's done lots of software. How did you, as someone who just had one plugin that was making some revenue, not a lot, because this is a big valuable lesson for a lot of people who probably have, you might have a great product, but distribution is always the hardest thing to get started with. How did you get that connection? How did you get him excited to promote for you, or with you? I guess you guys are partners.
I think it boils down to something that you are doing a really great job at as well. I mean, what would you say is like, what makes for Demio? What's like the biggest difference? If someone has like 1 second or 3 seconds to look at your site compared to a competitor, what's the biggest difference?
User interface and simplicity.
Yeah, and your overall design, your brand, it actually looks awesome. Like good design has, as you probably know, most tools and most so-called businesses or people who are in this industry, they don't do it the right way. Like they're trying, but they're not really getting it. Mm-hmm. So I think my main thing that I had for me is that the design and all of that, it looked really good, and it had that instant perceived value just from the design. So I'm not even sure how I got in touch with him. I'm pretty sure that I just emailed him, and I just had a link to my site, but because it actually looked good, he was immediately interested, right? So, and obviously the product itself has to be good, but I'm pretty sure that if it wouldn't have looked good, if it would have been like, oh yeah, it's kind of nice, he would not even have responded, right? And that's, I think, not just for, emailing something cold like I did with Mark, but even if people are going to your site and checking out your tools or your business, like the design, I think it's one of the most underestimated things of how powerful that actually is. So yeah, I think that I had that going for me, and that's what got his attention. And then we started to chat, and one thing led to another.
Well, that's fantastic. And so it brings me to two questions. One, how did you get good at design, or how did you get into the mode of user interface? Because all your products are gorgeous. You have a very good eye for product. Obviously, that's something that you brought with you all the way through your new SaaS products. But how did you start that way? Obviously, you were starting selling sunglasses in the beginning of your journey. How did you bring that to learning about design for software? And the other side is, how did you choose Mark Thompson? You said you cold emailed him. How did you know he'd be a good fit for your product? Yeah, questions.
Yeah. So first thing, the design. I think that's one of the lessons I also learned along the way when I was still before going into software. I've always been someone who was like detailed oriented. I just love a good design. I mean, I've probably bought over 50 templates just from Teamforce that I never use, but I just buy them because I think they look nice. I think they look good. So I'm one of those people, although I cannot make a design if I wanted to. So my main designs are actually made by someone. This is actually a good tip for those who are looking for one. I put a contest on, I think it was called 99 Designs, which is basically a design platform where you can put a project out, and then you give a certain price for that. And then multiple designers are going to come up with, for example, a logo or whatever you wanted to get designed. And then you pick the winner. So in other words, you get multiple people working on the same project, and you pick which one suits your needs best or which one you prefer. And that's how I got in touch with my main designer like years back. And after that, I think it's just a matter of like keeping a healthy relationship. And I mean, I've been working with him for I think 7 or 8 years now, and we go way back, and we're working constantly together. So I think that if you're looking for someone, then 99 Design, I'm not sure if it's still around. I haven't used it for a while, but that's how initially I found him. Mm-hmm. As for Mark Thompson, I'm actually pretty sure that was a bit of luck. I didn't know many people. I just saw him, and I liked his style. He sort of seemed he was doing the same sort of thing as I did, and I think he just released something for Facebook just previously, and I figured, hey, his audience is sort of into that, because my plugin was for Facebook as well. So yeah, I just took a leap of faith and sent out an email.
That's amazing. So some big kind of takeaways there, guys, is don't be afraid. If you have a great product and you're putting time in, don't be afraid to reach out to people who will benefit, and their audience will benefit from your product or plugin or whatever you're building, your service, your whatever product. But also really put in the time and effort to do quality design. And that's more than just looking pretty. And I think that's something that you've done so well. It's about user experience. Does the design actually give you better user experience? Is it helping you to navigate the product? Is it helping you to have better perceived value? Is it, just helping you along the way? So it's not just about like, how does it necessarily look, but how does it look and interact with the user? So really, really important tip. So now that you've kind of done this promotion, you guys made 6 figures in a week. So now you're getting into B2B SaaS. Where did you get into, what really kind of was the big wins there, kind of moving into the next big SaaSes, into Connectio, Upviral? And what are some marketing things that you found along the way as you kind of kept upgrading your journey?
That's a good question. I think, and this might sound repetitive, but like a big difference was yet again the design. I remember the first SaaS that I did, it was called Video Skin. It's not like, due to Facebook changes, it's not a recommended thing anymore, but back then it was. This was, I think I launched that early 2014, like 3rd of January 2014, so a couple years ago right now. And that was my first solo launch that I did with affiliates, like inviting affiliates. Actually, my second. I had one previously, a small WordPress plugin, which dramatically failed. And that's actually after I made the final decision I'm not going to do WordPress plugins anymore. So it was actually the first solo launch. And I was hoping to do like $30,000 or $40,000 on the launch, like to give you an indication of where my mind was at and what steps I like. You sort of go through various steps in your career, right? I'd say, and you run into some plateau. So I was at a level where I was hoping to do like $30,000 or $40,000 in sales. And I remember I was actually writing riding my bike with my wife, and I was like, oh, imagine what would happen if this launch would do like 50,000 or like, and then we started talking crazy, like what if, like, I've seen people do like 100,000 on a launch, like, and because this was different from before, because before I was doing it with Mark Thompson. So first of all, 50-50 goes to the affiliate. So that's like 50 to the affiliate, and then like 50-50 between me and Mark. And then there's some payment costs and there's JV prices. All in all, I would get like, I don't know, 15 or 20%, right? So this time I'm doing a solo launch. I was like, oh, imagine what would happen if we do like 100,000 on the launch, right? And I just put my best effort in, had no idea what to expect. And at the end of the launch, we grossed just over 300,000. And this was like way outside of what I was expecting. It was like way like beyond and beyond. And I was just amazed and super thankful for my affiliates. And if I could give you like the golden lesson of like what it was that made that success, to be honest, I think it was like, it's a combination of a lot of things and a bit of luck as well. So we did it on, I did it on the design was good. Something for those of you who are actually launching in the so-called affiliate space, I did it multiple times. Do it on like the 3rd of January or like the first working day in the new year, because nobody is going to do a launch on that day because there's work involved. But all the affiliates want to get started right away in the new year. They want to get something fired up. So I did this multiple times on like the first working day of the new year, get everything ready before. And every single time I had zero competition. There was no other launch happening. So all the affiliates, they were like, oh, I want to start the new year with a bang. So that really helps. So for those of you who are doing that, highly, highly recommended. And I think also just be fair to you affiliates. So in this case, I was doing it with affiliates. So give them 50% across the board. Make sure it converts really well. So besides having a good product, make sure like affiliates, I would say they promote either because it's a good product or because it's actually converting or because you're friends with them or like back scratching or whatnot, which I personally don't really appreciate or like I don't follow that bad. But having a good product and also getting good conversions for your affiliates, those two things combine really well, and that leads to a launch like that, I'd say.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you said, okay, so I really like the early year launch. I think that's amazing. That's something you can absolutely always do, and it's just smart strategic thinking as far as when can I do it. What were you doing? Twofold question. What were you doing to get prepared prior? Because like launches are a lot of work. So I like the idea of the early year, but you said you got everything prepared prior. But I could also see like stressing out all through the holidays right up to that launch and just so stressed through New Year's, so stressed through Christmas. Like, how did you get all that stuff prepared prior? And the other question is, what was I going to say? Oh man, I already forgot. Let's start there and I'll remember the other question.
I can answer it off first. You can think about it.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly remember how I managed to do it back then. I'm pretty sure it was not as fun. It was pretty stressful because usually launches can be pretty stressful. And that's actually why at some point in time, like later on, when I started doing multiple of these launches, I actually, either I wanted to stop them because I just hated it, or I wanted to do it completely different in a way that it was not stressful. So what I actually did was I wrote down every single step that needs to happen, like every tiny detail, getting an affiliate page up, shooting the JV video, writing the sales copy, writing the first OTO sales copy, like every single little piece that needs to happen, put them all on basically a checklist of what needs to happen. Started to working on a team that can help me execute on various things, so I don't have to write the sales copy myself, and I like everything that I was sort of able to let someone else do. So they were actually familiar with what they were responsible for, and I started to, instead of doing everything last minute, I started to making sure that I first of all got everything ready and prepped before I usually even let affiliates know that the launch was coming up. So except for what most people do who are getting everything ready last minute, I try to get everything ready quite a while in advance. And obviously there's always last minute stuff, but most of it, like first of all, the tool is completely ready. Most sales copy, most sales pages are already ready. And I'm talking like more than a month in advance, right? So as an example, I think it was last year, I launched a product called Connectio Target, as you know. Mm-hmm. We launched on a Friday. And on a Saturday, my wife got into an accident, so I rushed into the hospital. and I've just been in the hospital the whole launch. And literally the only thing I did was add in a couple of numbers in my JV emails, because all my customer emails were scheduled, all my, every single email was scheduled. I even wrote all my JV emails in advance. The only thing I needed to do is adjust the JV emails based on what actually happened in terms of the actual APCs and the actual top 10. I needed to change it a little bit, but I could just do that from my phone. But everything else was fully prepared. And even though I was in the hospital during the whole launch, it was actually a really good launch, and like it did not suffer from it. And that was actually the first time I actually prepared it that well. So I was kind of lucky. Mm-hmm. And it also reminded me that it's always good to be prepared, first of all. And also another lesson, which I think will be good, is that, and this goes not just for a launch, but for everyone, make sure you got a backup for everything. And I mean everything. If your server goes down, you want to make sure that you get a text that it's actually down. But you also want to make sure that someone in your team gets the same text and they know what to do, so it's not depending on me, right? And if, for example, your server goes down, you should also have your sales page on a second server, which, for example, we had it on Amazon S3, so that from Cloudflare, for those who are a bit more technical, you can just redirect the traffic, right? So everything in your business, try to have a backup in place. Try to have multiple autoresponders. Like, try to have multiple servers. Try not to be depending on you, and this way you can save yourself from a big mess as well. So that's just a little side story, a little side tip that I wanted to share.
That's super helpful advice, and I'm blown away by that. I've done multiple launches, and they are insanely stressful. I don't think I've ever had that much preparedness, but that's amazing to hear, and I think that's super, super smart. Mo said that's incredible. I think it absolutely is crazy, because you did an amazing launch with that Connect Your Target. That was one of your best launches, right? And just awesome. So he asked a question, do you work on one project at a time and then launch it, or are you kind of working on multiple? And that's a great question to add on to, is that with all these different products that you have, are you putting unique teams on each one? Are you continuing to work on each one while you're working on the next launch? How do you kind of handle all of that?
Yeah, so good question, actually. So initially, I always did like one project at a time, and then I launched it. And that was in my so-called launch phase, which quite a few people are still in, who are like, they launch a product and then like half a year later, some people even earlier, they launch a new product. And at some point you sort of realize that you're just launching new products all over and over again, which isn't really a good business model, right? So roughly 1.5 years ago, I decided to stop doing that and just focus on two of my businesses, which are Upviral, as well as Connectio, which you already mentioned. And for those, I got teams for both. And we're working on both in parallel because of that, right? So not just on the marketing side, but also not just on the development side, but also like design and marketing things. Like, we got mostly separated teams, so that I can work in parallel on both, and just I can divide my attention on those while they continue, and vice versa. Yeah,
that's awesome. And I guess talk to me a little bit about Upviral. It's something that we've used, that we're planning to use again here very soon for a new campaign, but I guess, how did you come up with the idea around Upviral? How did that go? And let's talk about that product. I think it was such a great product.
Yeah, so it's actually funny. Like, the WordPress plugin that I just mentioned, the very first one I actually launched, what I did was, I think I just told it before, is that people needed to enter their email address. And then once they did that, they came to a page, and I had a so-called share to get plugin there. So people needed to click on a Facebook share button. Mm-hmm. They shared a message on their Facebook timeline, and then immediately they were able to download it, right? And if their friends would click on that message, they would then go back into the opt-in page, so they could also enter the email address and do the same thing over again. Now, I was expecting it like, this is going to be the best thing ever, but it was not. I did got more than 100 shares, but a lot of people, they just either deleted it, the share, or they just posted it on a fake account, or even if they actually did share it, they were not really convincing their friends to sign up, right? So I saw people here in the Netherlands, like people around me, who just shared the pre-written English message, so that all of their friends would immediately know, like, this is not something, they didn't actually write this, right? This is just like a marketing message, basically. So that didn't really work well, but I was inspired with the idea. And then I saw Dropbox, as I'm sure you all know. So Dropbox, what they did really clever, they had a hard time growing. They initially tried paid ads, didn't work because they were not making the kind of margins to allow to run paid ads. So at some point, they gave all of their customers their own unique invite link, and they said, "Hey, share this with your friends, and every single time one of your friends signs up through your personal invite link, we'll keep track of that automatically. Every single time one of your friends signs up, you will get extra storage inside of your cloud, inside of your Dropbox account, which Dropbox is a cloud-based storage space, basically. So, in other words, they would give something of value in return of them actually promoting it with their friends. And I saw people promoting it everywhere, right? I mean, you probably got it from a friend as well, like everyone did, and everyone started to share it as well. Like, it worked amazingly. They grew to, I think it was like, I don't remember, like, was it 1.5 million people? I don't know the exact numbers from the top of my head, but like in just 1 year time, they grew like through the roof. It was insane. So, inspired by that, I actually did a test with the exact same setup. I hired someone once again from Upwork, hacked something together, like real simple, and I did the exact same principle. So opt in, and then after you opt in, you get like an invite link, personal invite link, and then people could share that. And then if one of their friends signs up, they would get, after I think 5 or 3, something like that, people would sign up. Then they would get once again a WordPress plugin in that case. So that worked like amazingly well. Like, people were sharing it all over the place, right? And this is, I think, around 2012 or so. So I was like, oh, I'm so excited, and I want to create something of this. And that's actually when the idea of Upviral started. I hired once again someone from Upwork, and he did not succeed. Let's put it like that. So after a couple of months of struggling, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to stop with it. But I never really forgot about the idea. It was always in my mind, like, oh, this is the thing I should work on. So it was actually a couple of years later when I started picking it up again, started working on it more, and that eventually led to Upviral.
Awesome, man. I'm pausing for a second here because I have my dog who decided to start barking randomly. So Audrey, come here. Sorry, my dog is crazy. Middle of the day. So Mo said light bulb moment. So, but we'll see what you have going on. So with Upviral, what happened? This is just a good question that came up because this is going to happen to a lot of people. This happened to us, which is, you said you hired someone and they didn't get the first version right, or they failed. How did you recollect and go back and attack it again? Or how did you decide to re-attack the problem from a different angle? Maybe you hired someone new. What did it take to not feel like you were defeated in that moment?
Well, I actually did feel defeated, and I actually just trashed it altogether for 1 or 2 years. So it was actually only after at that moment I trashed it, and I went on working on a more simpler SaaS, which was easier to create with people I was able to find. And over time, I found better people. I built a better team. And at some point, I was going through my sort of idea list. And once again, I still never forgot about Upviral. I was like, hey, I got a way better team now. Let's give it a new try. So for me, it was really about like waiting for the right time. Like we can all say like, oh yeah, I'm going to create, I don't know, the next Uber or whatever. But like you also want to be realistic in what your current resources are, or what your current own level is at, right? I mean, I don't want to keep talking anyone down, but obviously like you want to aim for the moon, right? In what you can do in your business. But at the same time, you also want to be sort of realistic, or at least that's the way I think, because if you go all in and you expect too much, then that could lead to something very demotivating, I guess. So it's a bit about managing expectations as well, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big firm believer in everything's a stepping stone. So everything is just the next step in your journey, and you can shoot for the moon, but you have to make steps to get there. You can't, like, if you don't know how to build a rocket ship, you're not going to get to the moon. You have to step up until you can learn to build that rocket ship that'll take you there. So totally agree with that. That's amazing to hear. And sometimes just putting things on the back burner and saying, I'm going to get back to it isn't defeat. It's, let's up level myself, my learning, my team, everything like that. You guys focus on other money-making opportunities. Mo asked a good question also that brought up some questions for me. He said, how do you not under or overvalue your product, which is really hard when you're launching it or you're just coming out with a product. And you've done a bunch, and I know you've done a lot of testing as far as different SaaS pricing models. How do you kind of come up with your pricing strategies, and what are you looking at every time you come out with a new product?
It's a really good question, actually. And often it's still a bit of like just guessing, I guess, and it might not be the best answer, but I think whatever you do, almost like most people I see around me, they always charge too little when they get started. And to be fair, that's actually okay, because initially you also want to get the users on board. You want to actually, get some people using your product, or even if you're selling a service, but you just want to get some people in, right? And then once you start noticing that, it's going really well, you can always increase it later on. So I actually don't think it's a bad thing to undercharge initially. Also, because in my mind, it's like you can always increase your prices, but it's hard to go back, right? And if you sold someone for, let's say, $1,000, then there's no way you can then half a year later sell that exact same thing for the half of that, for example. That would not be fair, right? So obviously you don't want to undercharge too much. You want to think about it in a logical way, and I think that's it's funny. That's also like right now, like you are also inside of the online marketing space. At least you're familiar with it, and there's so many people who charge, for example, like $40 or $50 for a tool that I think like, wow, it's actually genuinely a good tool, but you're charging like $40 or $50, and that's not a lot, right? That's too cheap if you want to keep on supporting it. And so what I would always do is, instead of looking at your competitors, first of all, look at your hard cost and be fair to yourself. Like if you sell something today, don't just think about whatever you're selling today, but think about, all right, so I need to support that customer. I need to hire people who can actually answer questions. I need to update, if you're having a software, you need to update the software. Like, first of all, think about your actual hard cost, because I think if you look at it that way, then you realize that there's no way you can sell something for $40, $50 a lifetime value and actually have a healthy business. Like there's just no way, especially if you're giving 50% away. So first of all, look at that. Look at your margins, and then at least you have the bare minimum. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you need to charge. You can charge way more than that, but at least you know that you shouldn't go under that, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say, just keep on rising, I'd say, based on the more value you provide. I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good advice. We kind of had the same approach, which was we can always undercharge to start for customer acquisition, for growth in the marketplace, and you can always up that pricing over time. So I think that's really, really great advice. How do you feel like, and by the way, I totally agree with you, like lifetime pricing for software, first of all, to me, it's just crazy. I just don't understand how people can do lifetime pricing, because you have to have updates, and that's just recipe for disaster. You guys kind of started getting in the IM space, doing more of a recurring front end pricing model. How did you decide to get into that, and how did that go for you initially? Was there any things that you learned trying to price in recurring?
Yeah, definitely. So, most people in that sort of IM, quote unquote, IM market, they are used to lifetime products, not just the customers, but also the affiliates who at the time I was still depending on for a big part of my traffic. Fortunately, not anymore, but at that time, that was the case. So at some point I just made the commitment, like I'm going for a recurring business, because to me, it's not just like the best thing ever online, but it's also like I have to do that in order if I want to build a healthy business, right? There's no way, like I said, there's no way you can build a healthy business selling software for a lifetime value. Like there's no way. Mm-hmm. So if you have a goal, like that, you will need to accept that you're going to have some losses as well. So I lost quite a few affiliates who are like, I want to promote you for like a lifetime price. I'm saying, no, sorry, it's just recurring. And they're like, I literally, some people unfriended me and like, I don't want to talk to you because you don't let me promote it for a lifetime price. And like, in my mind, that doesn't make any sense, but you have to accept losses like that. Also, as soon as you change your lifetime to recurring, your conversions are going to drop as well. So you need to struggle harder. You need to work harder to get the same amount of people in. But you know what? That's okay. It's just like an extra learning curve. So you set yourself back a little bit, but because you have your vision on your end goal, like the vision of like a year from now, 2 years from now, I got a healthy recurring business. It's okay to have some losses for like half a year or whatever. So just believe in what you do, and if you do what you believe in, then it's fine to have some extra lessons along the way, even though it might cost you some extra in terms of opportunity or actual money. Yeah.
I love that advice. I said it's so important to have the understanding of where you're going, and that sometimes when you have that longer term vision, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be new learning curves. It's okay to take a step back if you're going forward pretty far, but you just have to remember that those things are just those setbacks, and you're going to move forward with it. That's amazing advice. Really resonates with me as well. Now we have a question here for you. And this is great for you because you said you weren't, a developer or anything like that, and you kind of learned this along the way. How do you find, are you currently, or did you in prior projects find developers to work on your project, people that you can trust? So how did you build that trust, and how did you find them?
Yeah, so I believe that if you want to see how someone's actually working, the only way to discover that is if they actually work for you. So what like right now, I got my team settled, but when I was looking for developers, what I always did is I put up something on Upwork once again, and of course you make like an initial selection. But what I did is I basically dropped a simple project for like couple $100, $400 or $500, which I didn't actually need, but like it was a sort of challenge or a project which had like multiple things of like not like various things I needed to do. I was specific. I was actually not too specific. It was a little bit vague. Mm-hmm. And then I hired like 4 or 5 different people for the exact same thing. Like every single person would create the exact same thing, and just see how it works together. Like what kind of questions are they asking? How fast are they? How well is their, how good is their actual work? And because I'm not a developer myself, I was actually lucky enough to get some help from a befriended developer who was kind enough to basically check their code as well. So I was able to assess how they work, how fast, and what kind of questions and whatnot. And he was able to assess like the actual quality of code. And that way, to me, makes just way more sense to decide based on how they work together. And that's how I found all my developers. I love the process actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the hiring process too. It's one of my favorite things. And just kind of my own input is that I've also, you had a friend that you could go to, but I've also gone on like Clarity or on Upwork and just found really great people that are expensive and use them as consultants to review code, to come up with test projects, stuff like that. But I'm also highly looking at culture. And so with that, some of the questions and some of the things that I'm looking for are, how do they handle specific situations? I even go over like our strategic identity document, which is really like what our core values are, what our core elements are. And I kind of listen to their feedback. I want to hear what they feel about that document. Is it resonate with them? Because if it resonates with them, then they may fit with our culture. But I do the same thing with you. We do about a 2-week trial, and I let people know at the beginning of this trial, we're going to do 2-week sit down. We'll probably do normal pay, but it's just about learning how they work within the system and work with you, because you're right. There's no real way to get, any feedback until they get in the project. But cool.
Yep, exactly.
Guys, any other questions here? We'll use this time here for questions and answers. We've gone through a lot of a really amazing story. Any other questions that you guys have for Wilco here, maybe about products, software, finding teammates? You've just had an incredible journey. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your advice. I've learned a lot on this. Guys, just pop them in chat if you have any questions. We'll give you guys just a minute here. Any last feedback that you'd say for people, or kind of major lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's funny, like on one side, I'm really a believer that everything has to look really good and like it has to be perfect. But at the same time, if you launch something, if you build something, and at the moment of launching, you're actually proud of it, then I would say you've launched too late, right? Initially, I would say the first thing you put something out to market, you kind of want to be embarrassed for it. And of course, you also have to be proud of it. But what I mean is that I see so many people who are going way too much into detail, want to make it perfect, everything ready, and then they launch it. While what sometimes happens is that it was actually not what customers actually wanted, right? So by making sure you launch it soon, and I'm sure you know this as well, David, right? You want to launch it soon to get initial feedback in, and it's okay to be a little bit embarrassed about whatever you put out there, as long as you focus hard on improving it and listen to your customers.
I love that. The agile approach, and very famous quote, if you are proud of what you launched, you've launched too late. I love that. Mo asked here, how do you deal, and this is a great kind of tie-in, how do you deal with the frustration of a product not taking off, even though everyone that has used the software or product loves it?
It's a really good question, actually. Of course, I had it quite a few times where, like I said, even most of my projects did not take off. And for me, like I think it's a real good question. Like whenever I do something and it doesn't take off or it doesn't work the way I want, I'm being set off. Like it demotivates me. So I need to find my motivation from other sources. And whatever motivates you is different for everyone. But what motivates me is talking with people who have success, right? Talking with friends and people around me who are already doing what I want to do. So surrounding myself with people who are already successful, and just by listening to their stories and listening to what they're doing, I'm like, what? That's amazing, right? And I'm all excited again. And then I can put that energy that I'm getting out of that and just start over again. Like every single time, just starting over again. And it doesn't mean that I'm trying the same thing just until it works. Because if something doesn't work, you have to be honest to yourself, right? You have to admit that. But then I try a different angle, right? Try a different angle. So I keep on trying. I don't give up. I just try different angles. And I use the motivation I get from other sources and put it into that thing that is not giving me a motivation. But I have the end vision of where it actually should be. I hope that answers your question.
No, I think that's that's a great answer. One more question here. What do you use for affiliates? Any particular software or programs that you look at?
Yeah, I'm currently using Zaxa.com for affiliate tracking. I would say that right now in the online space, to be completely honest, there is not a perfect solution. But it really depends on your needs, and that sort of came closest to what I need. But yeah, there's many tools out there, obviously. Yeah.
Awesome. And I just popped that link, Zaxa.com, into chat. So check that out. Guys, I really hope you loved this call. Anna had one last question. She snuck it in. Any pros or cons, and she's in Portugal, any pros or cons from running a software business based in Europe versus the US? And obviously you're in the Netherlands, so you kind of have a good answer there, maybe.
Yep. So if you're from Portugal, and I'm in the exact same time zone, and for a long time, I thought it was actually a downside of being in the European time zone because I was not in the US time zone. And I saw people doing webinars. I mean, right now we got just a few people here because it's during the day for me. And it means in the US, it's either very early or very, very, very early, depending on which side of the US you're from. So for a long time, I always thought it was actually a downside. Mm-hmm. But a big part of my team is all in Asia. So if that's where you get people from in your team, from Europe, you can easily work together. Like all my developers are actually in India, and I love them actually. And I also travel a lot. And every single time I'm in the US, I actually realize that being in the US, it's pretty much impossible to work with people in Asia. There's just like last time I was there, I literally had a 12-hour time difference, which is the exact opposite. And every single time I'm in the US, I'm like, I'm happy I'm actually in Europe, because for me, it's like the perfect mix between, being able to communicate with people in the US as well as people from the other side of the world. And other than time zone, I really don't see a difference, except for maybe your language. But I actually found that my funny, weird Dutch accent is actually not, like, people accept that the way I am, basically. So yeah, I'd say it's fine.
I just got zapped by the sun coming up right now. As you can see, that's how early it is. The sun is coming through the window right now. I can't even see you. So I'm going to scoot over here against the wall so I can see. There we go.
That's fine.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up right here. So thank you so much for your time. Guys, thank you all for coming out. We'll get this back up on the blog as usual on demio.com/inside. That's Inside Demio. So Wilco, thank you so much for your time. And you have such an incredible journey. And, I'm just so proud to be able to follow you and see what you do.
Awesome. And no worries. Happy to help out. And let's keep in touch.
Will do. All right, guys. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.